in the class. All right. So welcome. We are gathering here at the tail end of 2021 to focus on the topic of inspiration and the antidote to those stuck patches that we all hit from time to time in our creative lives. And it doesn't matter where on that spectrum you might happen to fall today, just because you're not alone. And a man who cycles through all of that with grace and continuities here with us today, Raheem Nelson. He brought his artist buddy, Jean-Paul, and I'll turn it over to Raheem.
Great, thank you, Eleanor. And what I realized is, we had rescheduled this a few times, and I think it's actually really good to have it today, being so close to the new year. And we want to go into the new year as creative people with just, strategies and tips and, being a resource to each other to, be creative and get things done in the new year. And, also just doing it in like a healthy way, a productive way, in a way where like you can kind of take stock and reflect as well. So Eleanor and I will be leading the conversation on just staying creative during, trying circumstances, and just what to do during those times, like when you have like artist block or writer's block. There's like no right or wrong way to do it, but I'll be sharing today some things that have worked for me, and I'll go point by point. And then if there are questions during the talk, feel free to chime in, and we can just make this a group discussion as well. So what I'm going to start with is the first resource that I use from time to time when I'm feeling uninspired. And this can be like if I'm between projects, whether it's freelance projects or personal projects, and I just feel like I don't really want to do anything, like, because that happens from time to time. So what I would suggest as a resource is Pinterest. Pinterest has been really great for just kind of like if I'm don't necessarily want to do anything on a given day, but I either need to do something for a client or I want to create something for myself. So I usually go onto Pinterest and I'll start by creating some boards for myself or look at other boards and just kind of make like a scrapbook for things that I guess you could say like a break in case of emergency kind of thing. Like I'll just keep things on standby for those times when I might be uninspired. So like, for instance, like you want to make sure that you're prepared for like, even like if you're on a creative high and like, oh, I'm doing all these projects, I have all these jobs and it's great. Like just kind of prepare for that time where like you might be, on the downturn or something. So you're not going into anything like being unprepared. So I think Pinterest has been really amazing for, just a simple way where you can just go on your phone or you can go on a computer or your iPad, if you have a tablet, and just hook that up. And, it's very easy to just find different resources. Like I think Pinterest is probably even better than Instagram in terms of finding creative outlets, because I think it's like you can kind of focus in more, and where I love using Instagram, but Instagram is really easy for me to get sidetracked. I'm like, oh, why did I come here in the first place? So sometimes I'll take that break from Instagram and Facebook and just go into Pinterest and kind of really just hone in on finding resources to be inspired by, just coming out of that, creative downturn or slump, whatever you want to call it. So any questions or comments about Pinterest, and how do you use Pinterest if you use it?
I use Pinterest.
Cool.
Yeah, same.
Nice.
Yeah, me too.
Cool.
Do you have different boards for different projects? All of you who said you use it, or?
Yeah. Tell us more.
This is JP here. I don't necessarily use Pinterest boards per se. What I do sometimes is I'll scroll through to find different poses. And I can find something in like and sometimes something I'm not even looking at will inspire me to use something else, and I'll just go into a different direction altogether.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm mostly use mine for business aesthetic I guess you can say, like when I was prepping for like different markets or whatever, I need like a different booth setup. I definitely use Pinterest for that. And otherwise I do know it's like a better space if I did need a reference photo, like it's the superior photo image searching platform.
Mhm. Good, good. So resource number 2 for me, actually talking about photos, this is great, go right into it. Unsplash. And Unsplash has been a great resource for me. It's royalty-free images. I use them all the time. And that kind of goes along with my second strategy for when you're uninspired. And this, I'm thinking in like terms of an illustrator's mindset, but you could use this if you're like a photographer or whatever, really. And that's creating many projects for yourself, like things you can get done in like 5, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, like nothing that's too labor intensive, because you kind of want to have these projects where you can do when you're in between time, where you're like, oh, I feel kind of inspired today, but I don't really want to commit to something that's going to take me like 2, 3 hours. So for example, as an illustrator, as an artist, what I like to do are having like, get my references from Unsplash, and I put that into like my still life folder, or I'll find a found object in the house and then just create something with that. And that really helps me for, just those, times where I'm feeling like a little uninspired or, sluggish. I'll have this stuff on standby, with Unsplash. So it can be something as simple as like a lit candle, which I just did an illustration of recently, or it could be like food. Like I do a lot of food illustrations. I did some food illustrations for a cookbook that Eleanor and I worked on with another few friends actually, and it was a lot of fun. So you want to have like these little projects that you can do that will also, help enhance your skill set. And you can take like these projects, you can put them in a portfolio, you can, use it for clients and things like that. So it's like you're helping yourself out in that time where you might not be inspired, and you're building up like your visual language and your skills so that you can just kind of easily transition into the next job or the next project or something like that. And before you know it, like you're able to accumulate work, and it's like, hey, like I'm feeling inspired again. So it's like finding those times where you can like effortlessly go from, like these high points to like maybe like a midpoint, and not really feel as though you don't have any place else to go. And it's perfect now, like we're, in a pandemic and everything. So like it's not always wise to go out and, be around people when we have all these things to deal with. So setting yourself up for success where you can like maybe stay home if you have to, and then you've got like a resource like Unsplash, and you've got pictures on standby, and you just kind of pull those here and there, and then just create illustrations. You can create sculptures out of it, like whatever your artistry is. But like I highly recommend Unsplash as like a reference for like finding photo reference and stuff like that. It's been really great for me.
Good. I basically just saved it, so I'll use that as a photo resource as well.
Definitely.
And
Yeah,
that,
having references in your back pocket is really great.
and that brings up the importance. It's so easy to Google and find something, but then you're not really quote unquote allowed to use it,
Right.
copywritten to a different website. And it can be so tempting, but it's really just so important to go through the proper channels, right? For basing your inspirations, because it's really easy to do reverse image searches, and some companies do them regularly to see
Right.
if anybody's using their copywritten stuff. Unfortunate.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I used to use Google a lot for my illustrations, and I would post them. And it's one thing to create illustrations from a Google search, but like if you're posting, if you're even trying to sell it, that could come back and bite you. So it's just something to be careful about. Like either take your own references, or if you're going to use a royalty-free photography site, you're going to turn that into art and sell it. Give that person credit, and then like just read the fine print and just see what that looks like. Were you
Sounds
gonna
good.
jump in, JP?
I was going to say, I usually only use images for poses. So I don't necessarily draw the exact person. It's more if somebody's jumping, I pose. A lot of times if my wife's not around and I can't tell her to like, hey, jump and take a snap a picture of you, then I find who's jumping, who that's a perspective that I want. Or I use like a 3D modeling imaging on my iPad and just turn the image to the direction I need it to go into, and that pretty much takes care of that.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
Okay, resource number 3. This was a book I read a while ago. It's called Steal Like an Artist, and it's from author Austin Kleon. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. And this was like a life-changing read for me that I refer to, for those times when I don't feel inspired. And it talks about, being a creative person. It talks about like good stealing and bad stealing.
Right.
We as creative people are always inspired by things, and we're inspired by people, and no idea is like completely original. Like it's going to come from somewhere, something you've seen, something you've heard, something you've listened to. And I remember as a kid, as a young artist, I was always like, well, I don't like, is it really good to be inspired by others? And like, if I wanted to take from somebody's illustrative style, like what was the best way to do it? And it's cool to get inspired. And the main takeaway that I got from this book was that, like, so I'll use the illustrator standpoint. Like if I got inspired by like one illustrator, I try to find like 3, 4, 5 other artists that I could also get inspired by. So I'm gonna take from this person, this person, this person, and I'm gonna adopt it to my own style. So it's not just like a carbon copy of something else. I wanna put my spin on it. And that it's like what JP was saying with like using the references, but like changing it to a certain point to fit his aesthetic, and not to have like any blowback for legal trouble. So there's like that standpoint, and there's also like you just want to like put your creative spin on something. So like even if I have a reference photo, or if I see like a few artists that I'm interested in, which happens often, I think, well, okay, what can I utilize from their style that's going to fit me, instead of just like blindly copying, because that doesn't really do anybody justice. It's like, all right, that person made their work and you've got your work as well. Why not do your own twist or your own take on it? Like one thing I even do too when I'm uninspired is going to art museums and doing studies of different paintings and things like that. And if I do post it, I credit the original artist. I say this is a study on blah, 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 blah. And I'm not selling the work. I'm just like, okay, this is practice. And I'm posting this practice so that my audience can engage with me. We can talk about it. I used to go to like the Yale Art Gallery a lot and do that, just do these different studies. And that tended to be a great way to like get out of a creative funk. If I'm just around other amazing pieces of art, I'm like, oh, okay, how did this artist create, this portrait or this landscape? So doing those studies is not only a good way of like getting inspired again, it's also like a way to, get in the head of the artist that I might be mirroring, like doing my take on. Like when I was in London, for instance, I went to the portrait gallery, the National Portrait Gallery, and there was like a ton of art there that I absolutely loved. So I would pick out different pieces. I had my iPad on me and everything. So I picked a few studies to create, and then I would post them on Instagram and Facebook. And this started this whole dialogue about, different styles and why an artist might paint a certain way, why they might use certain colors. So then that gets me thinking in a different way for my own artwork that I create. Like, okay, if I use these cool colors instead of these warm colors, like how's this going to turn out? So it's all about, I guess like evolving and learning and transforming and just really taking, I won't say the best of, but like taking what you like from a certain artist and then putting that into your style.
Great. I try to do that too with recently, like some work, we always share artwork. So behind the scenes, but our friend, our mutual friend, Emmanuel,
Mhm.
had way different styles. But what happens is, yeah, he posted this one picture where it was like a scribble of a girl standing in profile or whatever. And what I did is I asked him specifically, could we, could I draw your picture or whatever like that? I cleaned up the line work, and then I did something since his style was more, I would say more cartoonish than my regular was. I just animated the eyes, made them bigger than I would normally do it, and gave it a more Disney-esque feel. And
Hmm.
really liked the pop, really liked it came out.
Cool.
So it's not really, you borrow what you can or whatever, and you adapt it to your style,
Mm-hmm.
make it work. Like for your work, I love your photorealistic style. That for me, that is your. I can watch you do your photorealistic work all the time.
Nice.
Like one of my favorites is you have a piece of Sade, which is like one of my ultimate favorites. There's one that you did of your wife, which is really, really good. I just really like that, love that style of yours. That's my favorite. And then you also have your cartoon styles, which are good as well. But borrow what you can
Mm-hmm.
and just tweak it so it's your own. And then
Yeah, absolutely.
So what happens is it allows me, but I usually ask the artist prior to me doing the illustration, is it okay if I could do your illustration? They usually be like, nah. I do an illustration and I post it, and I always link that. Anytime you go to my Facebook, my IG page, you'll always see that it says fan art for A, B, and C, and that's who it is.
So
Yeah.
what kind of art does everyone do? Because I hear like cartoon stuff and I'm like, ooh, interested. And then like
Mhm.
Sade, ooh, interested. What kind of art do you guys do?
Yeah, JP, why don't you take it first and I'll go after you.
Oh man. I would say my artwork is the like urban contemporary fashion mixed with a comic book style.
Oh, that
So
sounds awesome.
yeah, so I really appreciate that. I sincerely appreciate that. So I would probably be best described like if you were say behind the scenes and you were like, hey, listen, I'm making a superhero movie, but it's going to be live action. I would probably be the person who illustrated the costume prior to it being made. That's probably what my work would look like. At least to me, I think that's pretty much what it is because I always draw clothing. Like that's my thing.
Mm-hmm.
Clothing, hairs. Love to draw hair.
Mm.
I got to figure out if I can even show anything. If maybe it could, But that's it.
Yeah. It's been cool to see your style evolve too, JP. Like,
In
when
10
I first met you and everything. And you mentioned clothes and everything, like the textures you get on like denim and leather and everything, like a lot of attention to detail that I appreciate about your character illustrations. Like you'll, like no, not knocking any artists that you might reference or ask permission for, like you'll show me like their illustration. I'm like, wow, like JP, like you rated their character way better than they originally came up with. And sometimes it's like that, like I might personally, or you might personally prefer a different style aesthetically. And then like you're putting your spin on something like, wow, like that looks really good. That's like a step up from, what was originally conceptualized, so, definitely like you consider yourself a conceptualizer. So I always thought it's cool that you can take a specific style and then turn that into your thing too.
Yeah, I definitely try to do that. I like, there's a style of illustration. I believe the artist is called Loesch, like L-O.
I know Loesch. Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing artist.
But then again, because what I like is I like the ethereal feel of her style, but at the same time, I also like the comic book style. But unlike Raheem, when he does comic books, he has a very continuous line work. So no matter where I ever see his work, I'll always recognize it immediately. I could watch a million different pictures past the screen, and I'd be like, that's his. And I'll know it's his, and it'd be his, like that. I use like various line weights. I tend to use more color than line work, but I do have a very technical line skill. Tends to be very fine. And what I do is, it's taken me, I'm aging myself, it's taken me like 40 years to get to the skill level that I have. You know? And it only got better, like it only in the last 8 years.
That's a great reminder that there's nothing wrong with giving yourself time.
Right.
It used to be an avocation. My friends would be like, "Hey, look what I did," and we chuckle and laugh about it. And then in my, like I'd say, like my 30s, somebody told me, "Hey, listen, why don't you do a website?" And then somebody did a website for me, and then later on, my wife made me a website, which I kind of didn't pay attention to. But now I just use like Flickr. I use like Facebook, Instagram. I need some help on Twitter, because nobody sees me on Twitter. I don't know what that is about.
I don't know how to do Twitter either. I'm pretty good at
I
Instagram.
can help out with
Figured
that.
out TikTok, but Twitter, I like it still, but
Yeah.
I like to, basically, if you have, what do they say, not for work illustrations or whatever like that, you can put it there and it'll be, it won't be scrutinized. Nobody will take it down or shadow ban you or whatever.
yeah, and there's like a portfolio day, and that's helped a little bit, but those are like few and far between, I think.
I feel like Twitter's like the news channel, so it's kind of like events based. So if there's a hashtag conference, that a lot of times I've had my best spurts on Twitter by going to a conference and then like pulling out little quotes from the speakers and using the conference hashtag and like giving my interpretation of what went
Oh,
on.
that's pretty cool. I didn't know you're on Twitter. I'm gonna go find you.
Well,
I'll change, upload our, Raheem, everybody here. So if you could just switch, give everybody else our contact info.
Or
Yeah,
you
we'll
could
make
just
that
put it in
happen.
the chat probably too.
Yeah, for me, transition to Twitter is actually really good. I've been using Twitter again as of late, and I have a NFT store that I've created. So I use that to market those. And then I also use it to market my artist portfolio and different updates I have for my website. And what I've found works for me on Twitter, you want to be not posting constantly, but you want to be posting more on Twitter than you would on like Instagram or Facebook, like multiple times a day, space it out. So like you're not spamming or anything, but I try to like put up like artist updates. Like I've got a new illustration I created, and then also like kind of slice of life posts, you could say, like I'm getting ready for this meeting, I'm going to go give this talk or whatever. And I'll put the hashtags on it. And that tends to be working pretty well because I apply different ways of thinking with different platforms. Like Facebook, I post a few times a day usually, add some pictures, and then Twitter, post more on that, pictures and other status updates. And Instagram is probably like 1 to 2 times a day. And then stories, I might do a reel or two, especially for my fashion page. And that tends to work out pretty well. So every platform, has like its own language, its own algorithm, so to speak.
For sure.
Wow. That's literally a job.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. It is
a job I depend on.
Yeah. It's definitely a job.
so we still going around saying what people do?
Oh yeah, I didn't really say what I do. So I do a few things: portrait artist, comic book artist, illustrator, pop artist, and then I also do food illustrations and urban landscapes like New York, California, different places I've traveled to, and also make books here and there. I've done children's books for people. I've done my own art books, and I usually self-publish on lulu.com, but that's my skill set. And I create all that stuff on an iPad, but I'm classically trained as an oil painter, cartoonist, and illustrator.
You forgot
Cool.
animation.
I forgot what?
Animation.
Yeah, I dabble in that a little bit. Still improving when it comes to that. Like I've done a few gigs here and there for clients, but in terms of like having full movement, that's something I haven't really mastered yet. But the app that, you know, John Paul and I both use, which is called Procreate, it enables you to do, you know, really great animation. So I think one of my projects for the new year is just going to be like getting, like creating animation that's more refined, so I can make that for myself and then make it for clients as well.
And whiteboarder.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It means graphic recording. So that's another skill that I have as well. It's graphic recording or graphic facilitation, where you're in a meeting, whether it's virtual or in person, and you're writing down like the main ideas and then creating illustrations to go along with it. So if I was in a meeting on network marketing and something came up about IG, for example, I might write that down and then like make a little Instagram icon. So by the end of it, you can have people that haven't been to the talk or conference, you can show them this artwork and then they'll be able to get like, oh, okay, this is what was being talked about. And now I have the visuals to back it up.
Exactly.
Yep.
Hey, I'll jump in real quick. What
Yep.
you were just saying reminded me of what I like to do. I create, I guess I could say, illustrations or drawings of powerful words like that inspire me or whoever. And like what you were just saying reminded me, I like to kind of have a little consultation with the person I'm making something for. And I just ask them questions and they tell me what they like, or like the colors or symbols or whatever it is. And I'll make stickers, or I like making stickers myself, but I use third-party sites that make like t-shirts and posters and things like that. I use those as well. But I'll make a phrase or something for that person specifically that inspires them or makes them feel empowered, something like that. So that's kind of what I do now. And
Nice.
yeah. Next year I would like to make more NFTs. I have one right now, but I like to make some more and do some animation,
Nice.
have like moving artwork rather than just still work. So yeah, that's what I do.
Good stuff. This is great.
Cool.
Yeah, that's what I like about these talks. Like we can start one place and end up completely different. Like absolutely love it.
Yeah.
That's
So I make pottery. Well, I went to school for sculptural ceramics, so I studied more so sculptural pieces, and I was making a lot of animals and kind of like lowbrow pop art. And my pottery is still kind of like that, but it was just much easier to transition into selling something functional versus something sculptural. Because 2D work, people can figure out, yes, I put that on a wall, but a sculpture, people are like, what do I do with this? So I switched to pottery, and I make a lot of Dungeons and Dragons inspired stuff.
Yeah.
And recently did a Renaissance fair, which went really cool. And D&D is so popular on Twitter that I was just like, I should figure that out. That's why it's like
Oh yeah.
top of brain, you know? Yeah. And I have a show coming up in Minnesota about D&D
Ooh.
pottery.
Nice.
But I also do illustrate on Procreate, and I have a Patreon where they get like uploads and whatever. But that's a slower kind of learning my illustration style. You know, going to art school, you have to learn all the things, but trying to like hone in on a 2D style is a little different for me, having spent most of my time in like a 3D world.
Mm-hmm.
see that. See that.
Cool.
And I guess just for qualification, I did ceramics in school. I majored in cultural anthropology and became really interested in the role that art plays in society, you know, what use and value people put on it. And just interested in kind of hosting that conversation as broadly and in as many different channels as possible. So I like empty buildings, empty spaces, and to imagine and facilitate pop-ups in those spaces. And I'm focusing my arts organizing right now. And like I said, the inner ring of West Haven.
Mhm.
When you say pop-ups, like people showing up to events?
Yes, either a temporary business. I'm pretty interested in that line between like, is this a business or an art project?
Hmm,
Andy Warhol had said that the best form of art is a successful business. And
mhm.
people might fight me on that, but I think self-support is a kind of a superpower, and it's nothing to sneeze at. So yeah.
Right.
I can see that. Definitely see that.
That's great. Yeah, it's been really amazing that I was able to come to you, Eleanor, with this idea, and then we're just able to run with it.
Did you do the book for Ellen, the food?
Eleanor was one of my partners on that book. It was me, her, our friend Barbara Gold, who was kind of managing and overseeing the project, and
Right.
the baker that we work with, Amanda Glover. She's based in Litchfield. And we just came up with this cookbook. It was like her recipes along with my illustrations. So I was able to collaborate with her, and she would send me photos, and then I turned that into the illustrations, and that was kind of like in a pop art style. So that was a ton of fun. Like, and that really got me into kind of creating food illustrations in general. So I kind of like carried that on for myself. And that tends to be like one of the things I have in my back pocket, like if I'm uninspired. It's like, oh, I don't really feel like doing a portrait today, because I usually take at least like 5 to 8 hours on like a realistic portrait, where I can do some food art in like 30 minutes to an hour.
Mm.
So it's like having, again, those small projects I can go back to. And then even making a list of, not only what I'm good at, but like, hey, like I can do this in like 10 minutes, I can do this in 30 minutes. Let me go do that, and I'll come back to something, that might take me longer. And that goes to my next point. Like, you want to play to your strengths, like, especially if you're uninspired. Like, what are you really good at? What can you do in a short amount of time? That's, I'll say, doesn't take much effort because you put in like your 10,000 hours. Like, maybe it took effort before, but like you've got it down to a science now where you can get it done really quickly. Like, that's how I feel about doing still lifes, for instance, like me going to ECA, me going to college in Manhattan. I was able to like kind of refine how my hand-eye coordination is. Like, if there's something in a physical space, I can render it, and I can render it quickly. So that tends to be one of the things that I tell my students. It's like, hey, if you're feeling like this, like, you really need to like get into gesture drawing and still life. It's like, gesture drawing, like even using it in a digital way, or charcoals, or pen and paper, is really good for eye-hand coordination and muscle memory. And it just kind of like flows into everything that I do, like where I'm more efficient as an artist. I'll take like the visual information and I'll just turn that into art. So that would be like one of the things like I just recommend to like anybody, like even if you don't consider yourself an illustrator or somebody that draws, like practice your gesture drawing. Like, put a timer on, like 5 minutes, less than 5 minutes, look at an object and just see how much you can get done within that time frame, because it gets you to create within a structure, and you can apply that to like almost anything.
That's true. But people might not realize how ridiculously fast you draw.
Mhm.
He's a
It's something I don't want to say I take it for granted, but like I'm just so used to it.
There's word exercise.
Yeah, I've gotten really fast when it comes to that. Mm-hmm.
I've listened to the Creative Minds panel at the Connecticut Forum a couple weeks ago, and the front man for the band called Wilco, named Jeff Tweedy, was in there, and he was talking about songwriting exercises when he's not feeling inspired or when he needs a kind of boost. One I'll just share quick was called a word ladder. He was pretty inspired by the surrealists and the kind of exercises they would do to make strange combinations. And the word ladder, you take the nouns from something familiar, like the Battle Hymn of the Republic or the Constitution preamble or something, and like go through and put all the nouns on one side and then pick an activity and put all the verbs that go with that activity on the other side. So he was saying like scuba. So you take all like the nouns from the Battle Hymn of the Republic and all the verbs from to scuba diving, and then just kind of look across and kind of build a system of new associations and ask yourself questions about what you see, you know, like what would happen if can a flag dive, you know, things like that, that just kind of make you bend language in a new way. So that's that I might tuck away for an uninspired day.
That's different.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, another idea for when I'm inspired that I've applied personally is just journaling. Like journaling about, it could be about your day, it can be about what you want to create in the future. Like, hey, like this is a project I want to create maybe in a few days when I do feel inspired. And then just really going through those processes. And if you don't want to write, like sometimes I'll even like do audio journals, like especially when I'm driving. I've been driving a lot lately for the holidays and stuff. So I'll make these audio journals like, hey, like these are the things I'm going to be doing in the new year. Like this is what I've learned in the past year. And this is where I want to take my business and my personal projects, because they're related, you know, having projects I do for me and then projects I do for my clients, and just making a log of that. It can even be like an itemized checklist. Like I'm going to do this sketch for this client tomorrow, and then I'm going to take an hour break for myself to create a still life. So I'm balancing, you know, meeting my clients' needs and then also meeting my own needs for things that I might want to create for myself. Because what I used to do is just kind of like dive right into working on a client's work, and then I would also be like available all the time too. And that doesn't really work, because if you're not setting boundaries with somebody that you're working with, you're just going to get burnt out, and you might even feel like uninspired while you're working on somebody else's piece of art. So what I've tried to, not what I've tried to do, what I have been doing is like kind of like working the hours between like maybe like 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. on client work, because I also have a day job, and then making the client aware, like you can contact me within this window. Anything before that or anything after it, like you gotta wait. So this way you're taking care of them, they have their expectations, and then you're able to like just create artwork for you too. So definitely setting those boundaries and making sure you stick to them is a really good way to, you know, make sure like you're doing exercises where you can feel creative and inspired, and then that'll make it easier to get like the client's work done too.
Another thing to add to that is now that I'm transitioning to retirement, I have you know, I'll take my mom to the grocery or my wife to a doctor's appointment, and I always carry my handy dandy iPad with me, my iPad Pro, and that is the best time to draw. Plus, a lot of people, specifically me, since I've been drawing since I was about 4, every picture I've had since maybe high school, I have backed up. So whether it's a sketch on a napkin or whatever like that, I have it backed up. So I always have access to it. What also helps tremendously too is pictures that are similar. So let's say you're a person and you draw angels or something. If you've drawn 50 angels, they shouldn't be scattered around. They should be in one file. So now if you ever have to come in, you know, and somebody's like, hey, now you technically have a portfolio, even if it's not finished. Like, you know, Procreate has, what's it called? It's called, you know, like when you combine all your pictures together, that little clip gallery you have there, you have all those pictures in that one file, you know. So, and then like let's say like if I go into my gallery now, I'll look at my file set up as you know, because there's the new 3D stuff, so 3D exampled artwork. So I have the examples that came with the device. I have accessories. I have action poses. I have Afro-Asiatic art, which is basically people doing like martial arts, but it's usually, like ancient martial arts, like the Shaolin Temple guys. Also some African guys who do different types of martial arts. I have angels. I have completed artwork, which is hundreds of pictures that I completed. I have like ballet, which is just,
Mhm.
I don't even know why I got it. I have the comic book artwork, like 135 pictures. And I did 9 comic book. So I don't even know how I have 135 different pieces, but I guess over the time, I just, whatever I liked, whatever I didn't like, whatever, I just kept it. I do collabos, like the collaboration stuff with Emmanuel, with a whole bunch of other people in there. I have comic book panels, even though I personally don't do the inside of the comics. I usually do the cover work. That's there. I have commissioned artwork and portraits, couples, faces and hairstyles, fashion, gradients, graffiti, logos, and new projects. So I have like everything is there. So I don't even have to really think about it. I have actual hard photo references of people that I like or whatever. Matter of fact, you're one of them because you're always wearing your suit. So I have a picture that I think Busby did the picture of you. So I have it because it's a really good picture.
Yeah.
And so if I need a suit that's not you, I can illustrate the suit, that other person's visage on the suit, and make it look like it was made for them. They're gonna be like, damn, I look good. Like, that's not your body, but I made it look like you.
Right.
So like,
Yeah, I'm gonna jump off of that too. That's really good stuff. What you're making me think of, JP, is also having hobbies outside of your creative endeavors that you can, just partake in if you're feeling like uninspired. And you might be doing one of these hobbies and then get inspired to make something that you didn't even think of. Me, for instance, like I love my video games, I love movies, I love TV. And, coming from a cartooning comic book background, I watch film and TV like a creator. So I'll look at how shots are composed, I'll look at how characters are lit, I'll look where the story is going, because I really want to understand what the intention was behind the director, and maybe like even what the actors were thinking when they're going through the scenes and everything. And then I'll turn that into like my own short stories or my comic books. I might get inspired by something that way. So I highly recommend, like, it's good to just take a break from creating and like just take it easy, sit back and be kind to yourself. Like, everybody's going to go through those spaces where like, I don't really feel like creating today. Like, okay, take it easy, read a book, go for a walk, work out, do what you like to do, and then come back to creating. And, like, the work will still be there. It's all about just creating a structure that works for it.
Well, I believe in organization because that helps tremendously. Also, like you said, like, I watch a ton of movies. I call you all the time. Did you watch this? Did you watch this? Already seen Spider-Man. Already seen for what is this? The Kingsman. I mean, I watch movies totally. So I very rarely have a funk. Usually when I have my art funk, I've been doing this so long that I can tell you exactly when I'm going to have the art funk. And it's going to be between February 15th and like, then I won't draw for nothing. I just like, that's, I don't know, maybe the vernal equinox or whatever. There's not enough sunlight or whatever. I don't know. That's
Nothing wrong with hibernating.
Yeah, that's what it is. And trust me,
nothing wrong with that at all.
It's good that you know yourself well enough to be like, anticipate nothing's happening there.
That's right. And then I also know naps are the greatest thing on the planet. You should have a nap once a day. It really means a lot to take a nap. Definitely.
Yeah.
And it stimulates your consciousness. When you're sleeping or whatever like that, it's great. It doesn't even have to be like an hour, man. Like a nice little 45-minute power nap. That's it. And what you do too, exercise.
Yeah, exercise is so important. I do it religiously, and just gives me all the energy I need to create and really just live my life. You know, being married now, you know, I've got to make sure my wife is good and my daughter's good, and then creating that time for myself to do artwork and have client meetings, and even kind of scale the meetings back a little bit because I'm on this vacation. So I'm going to be kind of going to virtual, which was a suggestion from a friend of mine, because I don't want to be driving everywhere, you know, to go to meetings and things like that when I can just do a Zoom meeting here and there. So really just protecting my energy, protecting my creative energy, also wanting to collaborate with people, but just managing it. Like, it's all about boundaries and, you know, managing expectations, because you want to make sure that you have energy for yourself for those times when you are inspired, which is hopefully more than often than not. And if you're going to be working with clients and collaborating, like, hey, like, we can talk during this time, this meeting will be this long, and then, you know, go back to what you're doing after that.
That's it.
I know a creative that really manage her energy. So the default is a virtual meeting, but then you could, you know, a client could pay extra for an in-person meeting, and she has like zones, you know, like up to 50 miles or you know, over 50 miles, and 2 different prices for, yeah, I'll come and meet with you in person, but it has value and it has some extra value.
Definitely.
Yeah.
That's worthwhile. I would do that.
Mm-hmm.
Do like a one-on-one consultation. That would be great.
Yeah, consultations are great. I have a client that I do that with. She's an older lady, and we've been working together for maybe like the past 8 years now. And usually I'll just do virtual, but she's not really that tech savvy, and she likes having a lot of revisions on top of that. So what I had to start doing with her was saying, okay, like, I get that you want these revisions. Like, here's my hourly rate for any revisions. I'm going to charge you half of the hourly rate for the hour, and then we'll just pack in what we pack in, as long as it's not like ridiculous or anything like that. So she realized, like, okay, like, if I want these changes, I'm gonna have to pay for it. And then, like, she likes to meet in person on top of that. So sometimes, like, might be a little surcharge because of that, especially if it's a rush job. Like, I just had some revisions for her recently. I was able to do those where she just emailed me, which is rare because we usually meet face to face. We talk about what needs to get changed and then make the changes. So the boundary that I had to put with her was like, hey, like, we're gearing up for the holidays. I got some things I'm managing. I can take care of these revisions for you, and then it's going to cost this much because it's a rush job. And if you want more revisions, it's got to wait until the new year. So I manage expectations with her, and I'm not putting myself in a position where it's like I've got revisions, and I'm trying to have time with family. Like, I don't mind, you know, the extra money. It's great. Really enjoy working with her. And at the same time, I'm not going to put myself in a jam because she wants like extra revisions on this project.
That reminds me of you and Derek. Remember the guy you up with?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You know, you became an expert with,
yeah.
you know? Yeah. I also had someone.
Yeah. Derek was a client that Jean Paul introduced me to. And we were just in a situation like we were filling each other out. Like, it's always a relationship when you're working with a client. And he wanted certain things revised. I was like, all right, like, well, it's going to cost extra because like there were just a lot of revisions that are being thrown my way down the pipeline. I was like, all right, this is like a lot of things that are getting changed. So we just had to work something out. I was doing storyboards for him and character illustration. And my experience working with writers is like they've got their own ideas, they've got their own visions. And then me as the artist, it's my job to kind of like bring that vision to fruition, and also letting them know like, okay, like, I know this is what's in your head and you want to see it. It's going to cost this much for it to happen. You know,
Right.
like everything, you know, has to be within the confines of the price that we set. And instead, like, it got a little bit out of hand, and I kind of had to reel things back in. And that's been a similar experience I've had with doing a few logo jobs where, you know, clients will want like tons of revisions. I'm like, no, like, you only get this many, and then additional, you got to pay what the price is. And then that kind of like has them get reined back in. So I do
What is-
that, and then having contracts is important too. Having a contract in itself inspires me to make more work because everybody puts their name to something, and we're good to go. I just had an experience. I did a free job in New York for my favorite rapper. The guy's name is Sky Zoo, and so it was him, and then a record shop owner. I did the photography for the both of them, and it was a networking opportunity. And in the past, my younger self, I would just give them the photos away. I'm like, hey, run wild, do your thing with them. But I want to make sure I get the photography credit, and I want to make sure that this turns into future work. So I had them both sign off on it, saying if you use these photos, you don't have the rights to them. Like, you are using them as a gift that we're exchanging hands. No money is being exchanged, but they're signing off to advertising them properly and advertising them in a way where I myself as a photographer gets credit, because I usually don't do free work for people unless I have a feeling it's mutually beneficial, which it was. So even in doing the free work, like, I made sure there was a contract to be signed off of, because I don't want to have like any difficulties later, like especially if it's free or if it's paid. Like, always having that contract has been like super instrumental for me.
What is your usual revision, not your revision rate, say, but how many revisions does a client per
Yeah, three. Three's the magic number for me.
there you
And it
go.
usually doesn't even get to three. Like, sometimes they like to know that like they have up to three before they're paying additional charges. But like, three tends to cover things pretty well in my experience.
Also, I'm something for the novice in mind is this: anytime you're going to do artwork for someone, you want to ask the most amount of questions possible.
Yes.
Almost let
Absolutely.
them. Meaning, like, the difference between an illustrator and a writer is this: and a writer is going to tell an illustrator he's 6 foot tall. So as an illustrator, you're going to start drawing someone who's 6 foot tall, but then they'll be like, "Oh, I'm sorry, he's 4'5". Now, what happens is the illustrator has to go back and they have to rebalance that body. But the difference between saying it and physically doing it is a skill, right? Because all the rechanging words, what you do with your mouth, what you do with your brain, but then to physically sit down and take a pen and start constructing again, that takes time. That takes a long time, so everybody doesn't really appreciate it. Like I think being an illustrator sometimes, and this is going off the subject, is it's not really appreciated. Like, when you go to McDonald's, you're assuming you're going to go get something to eat, so they'll tell you how much it costs before you say, I want a number one, and you're paying them before they even go to the back and start making your sandwich or whatever like that. So I think as an artist, you have to know your worth, you have to know how much it's going to cost, and you have to be able to say it's cool if they don't want it. So like, if you tell someone, hey, listen, hey, picture or whatever, it's going to be $150, and they'd be like, oh, that's kind of expensive. You'd be like, hey, listen, I could refer you to somebody who's gonna, who's a lot than I am. Get what you. Usually, when you finish with that, they'll be like, oh, okay, never mind. Let's go with what you got. That's what it is. You have to know what you're worth.
Yeah, this is perfect. Goes right in hand with what we've been talking about.
And what your worth has to be this. You have to know the quality of your work. You have to know how expeditious you can do the work. And then you also have to know, is the quality of your work equal to or equivalent to the money that you're asking for, right? Because, there's certain artists, and I hate to say, you have to pin yourself against those artists. A person like Alex Ross is a fantastic watercolor painter, does comic book covers or whatever like that. He is a genius at what he does, but he can charge you a certain amount of money that I would never be able to even open my mouth and ask somebody for. I said, remember, Raheem, I sent you something, I think it was like last year, how much Jim Lee makes. They say Jim Lee makes $15,000.
Yeah.
$15,000 for something that's 11 by 17, draws by hand. And it's a print, so it's already printed out. But for color by hand, he's charging $15,000. That's amazing. And that's the low of his spectrum, because it goes all the way up to like $45,000. This dude is, and to me, I think he's way better than anybody else, but he's earned that respect. He's been in the business a long time, and he's earned that respect. So we have to know what we can.
I've been seeing the phrase sold out on things that Raheem's been doing and Ave's been doing. And Ave, you do a lot of seasonal like collections and things. You want to talk about how inspiration works on that kind of seasonal basis, how you gear up for the next?
Yeah. So I do make a lot of like functional things, like I was saying, and I do really like Halloween and Christmas as the seasonal times. So those are my most seasonal collections. So with Halloween, I always figure out some like Dungeons and Dragons monsters that I haven't done. So I'll look through the manual, and obviously like 80 to 90% of D&D is just based on folklore. So there's always some ancient old tales and stories and old drawings of what these beasts looked like when they were first thought of or introduced into a story. So I can go back into like the history of an owl bear, let's say, and figure out like, okay, well, I'll pull from this sort of reference here and this sort of reference here, but I'll, put my own spin on it and my own style, and then turn it into a cup. But I mean, it's still primarily a sculpture. At least to me it is. It just has a hole in it that you can drink out of. But yeah, so using the seasons as a way to inspire me has been not only beneficial for my business, because it's things that people can recognize and connect with, and people also really love to get into the spirit of Halloween and have a zombie mug, let's say. But it also helps in like as a business in the most busy time for gift giving, that I'm not out of ideas. And then with working in a collection, like one of my favorite collections was still like an Animal Crossing collection. So I was just like, what about this game am I so hype about right now? And just took those things into pottery. And I was just like, let's work with the fruit that's in Animal Crossing. But I mean, like, sure, it started off with Animal Crossing, but it's still just like it's fruit with cute faces, and it's just like highly stylized fruit. And that became a whole collection of pottery, just pottery inspired by fruit. But for me, it started off as like Animal Crossing. So that's how some of my collections and inspirations come about.
Sounds interesting. Got to see it.
Thanks.
Very cool.
Yeah, I love
Yeah, I
the
think
idea.
for me, oh, go ahead, Eleanor.
Oh, I was just going to say, I love the idea of just taking things that you're enthusiastic about and then finding ways to express them in your particular art form. There's this myth, this writer named David Cord Murray talks about the myth of total originality, that so much of creativity is just like recombining things.
Yeah, I think like I've never read the book Steal Like an Artist, but I feel like that's what I've heard about the book, is just like you really like the style of the eyes, the twinkle of the eyes of this person's artwork, but you really like the line work and the line weight of this person, but you like the colorway of this and the brush of that. And then like obviously it's still going to be original to yourself because you're the one doing it too, because you're going to have your own, way of moving whatever medium you're doing.
What you're saying is so right. Like I don't know if you know what a tardigrade is, but a tardigrade is this microscopic microorganism that's on everybody's face right now. It's kind of disgusting looking, but if you ever seen see what it looks like, it's also in Star Trek Discovery, like the first season. It's what makes the ships, fly from point A to point B. But the thing about it is somebody literally took a microscopic organism and decided to say, what, let me use this in a movie, that has nothing to do with that really. And that's what it is. Like it becomes a concept for something completely different. And here it is, someone who might not be into biology or pay attention to flex of skin that might be on their pillow. Yeah, bro, that's artwork. I mean, it's just how you use it. So I hate to have used your animal and talk about the bugs that are on our.
It's fine.
bugs crossing. That's what the
Yeah.
animals, you know.
Mhm.
You just reminded me of a dream I had a few nights ago because a friend was describing, he's a plant scientist, and he was describing these little nematodes that travel. He tries to collect them from diseased plants and how they have so much
Mm.
energy, and he can't believe they're still going after a certain number of days. And I had a dream there was a modern dance group that was interpreting a dance of these nematodes. And so all that to say, I'm a big fan of having that 10 or 15 minutes to lie around in bed for me and to like wake up gently so that I can kind of mull over my dream life, because that kind of keeps me
Mm.
connected. I'm processing a lot at night. And yeah.
Mhm.
I've had dreams where I figured out the answers of the universe, and in that 1 to 2 seconds before I turn around to turn the light on and find a pen and write it down, I forgot those problems. It was
I honor that you had it. I honor you.
I know for a fact. I mean, it was in my dream. Everybody was like, "That's it," and I'm like, "Yep. Where's my pen?" And when I turned on the light click, I was like,
Mm.
"What?" I have this, So
Well, I think the subtext here of inspiration is that in getting together and talking about it, it kind of grows. And, most of the times where there were like a lot of geniuses, they would get together and talk to each other and feed off each other. So I love that we can do that in our own time, and happy that I feel like the world's brighter when people like you all have a chance to meet each other and
Mhm.
great
know
minds.
what each other's doing.
Wow.
Did we cover your material, Raheem, now that we're at the top of the hour?
Yeah, I guess closing thought for me, what I didn't mention, also seek out people that inspire you. That is a big one for me. That's been life-changing. Like, it's so easy to connect with people. Like, even if you feel like they might be famous and you can't, reach them, just try anyway. Like, I met an artist that definitely one of my favorite artists. This guy's name is George Colombo, and he is on his iPhone, and then he got famous off of that. And he was doing a speaking engagement at the Museum of Modern Art. So I went, and then became fast friends. And then before I know it, he ended up writing the foreword to like one of my books I published on Lulu, just because like I asked permission. I said, "Hey, I'm a fan of your work. Like, can we hang out? Blah blah blah." And it just turned into something. And I never would have imagined having like this friend and mentor, because I was just like, "Hey, like, I like your work. Like, can we work together?" And then it turned into something.
Good.
Yeah.
I'd like to say, just a passing thought. I think what also can help us as artists is, like you said, reach out to people as well, but maybe also physically write down what you want.
Yeah.
An idea, like, not to be religious or anything like that, but what happens is, you're supposed to think it, you're supposed to say it, you're supposed to write it, and then it becomes reality. And if you really think about it, you could look at someone like Leonardo da Vinci. I'm pretty sure he thought of those millions of ideas he had. He then, probably said something out loud, like, this would probably be a great idea. And then he sat down and he physically penned them out. Some of those ideas were actually physically made, and still are in museums today. So I think that would help tremendously. At least you a avenue to travel, instead of, creatively, and also for you to have a focus as to what you might want to do, so that helps. Just at least have the idea,
Definitely.
so you could bounce back on it, so even if you don't do it today,
Mhm.
maybe, or maybe that idea is just planted because you're not physically or mentally or financially or whatever type of ready you need to be. But then maybe you will be 6 months from now. So, you know, but what happens is you wouldn't think of that idea unless that idea was already sitting there on your, you know, right there on your dressing table or something like that. And then you're like, oh man, I always want to do it, but now I have the time to do it. So, you know, that makes sense.
Yeah,
That's it.
good stuff.
Thank you all for,
Yeah, this is
for
great.
sharing your
This is great.
experience and expertise and all that good stuff. I appreciate everything. Thank you for the talk today.
Thanks for making
No problem.
time.
Thanks for coming through and being amazing.
Appreciate it.
Ave, anything you want to add before we close up?
No, this was great. And I definitely relate to like writing stuff down, because it also just like clears your mind.
Yes.
Just if there's a billion things happening all at once and they have no place to go, like how can you think clearly? At least that's personally for me.
True.
Fresh blank notebooks.
Yeah.
Got them
Just
yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, we'll continue the conversation in the new year. Thanks, everyone.
Definitely.
Thank you to Raheem for your thought process and preparation, and have a great evening, everybody.
Yeah. Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you,
care.
Jean-Paul.
Nice to meet you.
Bye.
Nice to meet you.
Appreciate it.
Bye.